Hello, welcome to another episode of the Dark Side of Devotion. How's everyone doing?
Woohoo!
Ready?
Feeling
We ready?
good.
We ready?
In this episode three, we kind of dove in and followed out. But today we're gonna learn a little bit about Steph's story. How kind of your upbringing, what brought you to the Universal Church, and kind of like tells us your story. Steph, it's all yours.
Thank you. So I'm born and raised from the Bronx, New York City, and Puerto Rican family. So I grew up in a Spanish household, Spanish speaking and English speaking household. My mom took school very serious, so she put in the effort to put me and my siblings all through Catholic school. All of our schooling is from Catholic school. Um, And so I've always been surrounded by religion all of my life. All of these ideas and dogma has always been a part of my life. Um,
And quick
Pretty
question. Quick
sure.
question. So when you grew up Catholic, so you were also taken to like Catholic church, going through mass with your grandmother, or it was just like in your house?
So because I was in Catholic school, we would go to mass, but it wasn't a weekly thing. We weren't like super devout Catholics or anything, but we were
Mhm.
devout enough that like I did all my sacraments. People who are familiar with Catholicism might be familiar with like penance, communion, confirmation. I
So
did
you
all
did
of
do.
that.
So you did all of those. So you kind of like just went through the motion with that religion as well, with that religious organization. Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I like asking because
Oh,
I didn't know any other religion other than the one I grew up in. So it's always good to
oh,
ask.
got you. Yeah. I mean, again, we weren't super devout, but like we had a picture of the Pope on in our house. So it was still like religious, like culty.
Mm. It wasn't
But
as controlling, but it was still like very present, basically, right?
Yeah,
right,
you couldn't
exactly.
really like do anything wrong in front of the Pope, otherwise you're disgracing, you know.
Right. And one big difference is that I was never involved in like any
Mm-hmm.
programs or any youth group from my Catholic church or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. So that already right there, I dodged a huge bullet right there already, probably.
Gotcha.
Sure. Because
Okay.
nothing bad ever happened in the Catholic extracurricular activity.
That's
Moving
why I'm
on.
saying I dodged a
Dark
bullet.
side of devotion.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So um as I got older, I started suffering sexual assault. And that is the turning point of my life because that's when I started becoming depressed. I started cutting myself. I started becoming really isolated. I would lock myself in my room. I wouldn't want to talk to anybody. I wouldn't want to expose myself. I started dressing very baggy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this started when I was 10. And as I got a little bit older throughout the years, 11, 12, and I started like, my body started developing and everything, it was a very awkward time for me because I didn't want to call attention. I didn't want to be attractive. I didn't want, because of the abuse that I was suffering, obviously, I wanted to just sink into a black hole. Like, that's what I
And
wanted.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. And like, did anyone ever find out like when you were going through that situation? Like a family member or
Yes.
something?
Um, yes, because I ended up speaking up. I
Okay.
was just very,
Good for you.
very. Yeah, well, it happened because I was very quiet one weekend, just super something had just happened, like an incident had just happened. So I was extra closed off. And this was actually during Halloween, funny story. I loved Halloween growing up. Love, love, loved it. I always went trick-or-treating. And we had went trick-or-treating. I didn't even want to go, but I just did it to not look suspicious because it was an
Mhm.
awkward conversation to have with my mom. So I didn't want
Of
to tell her what
course.
was going on. I tried to act normal. So we did the
Mhm.
whole trick-or-treating thing. And then when we got home, like I just locked myself in my room. I didn't even have the candy with me. I was just, and that was so not like me. Like I didn't
Mhm.
have the candy that I had just went trick-or-treating for. I wasn't like doing anything fun. I didn't look like I was having fun and it's Halloween night. So my mom was like, that's off. And she ended up, talking to me in the middle of the night. She hit it right on the money. She was like, "Oh, did this person do something to you?" And I said, "Yes." And then I just started bawling, 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 and I just felt like for the first time I could release everything and let everything out. And, so, I did end up speaking up, and, from there, the rest of my family did find out. So I did get at least that release, because it's something
Good.
really sad when
Okay.
you have to live with that, and hold on to that and no one else knows.
Yeah. Mhm. And
Um,
did you go to therapy? Did your family member, like, family reach out to therapy, or did you kind of, you know, unpack or go through therapy to kind of understand that it kind of wasn't your fault? It was, it was someone sick in the head that, did what they did to you. Did you ever, like, during that
mm,
period?
no, not at all. Zero unpacking. I had zero guidance, no therapy. Therapy was church, because this is where church comes in the picture. It was like literally the same week. So we have been on and off going to the church. The universal church has been in my life since I was, a kid. We always would go once in a while for like special events. But then this was like a huge thing. Our family was falling apart. I was depressed. Like, I wanted to die. I hated my life. It was such a dark place, a dark time. And my aunt had been a faithful churchgoer to the Universal Church for a few years at this point. And a second aunt as well, who had cancer, had started going to the church faithfully as well. So my mom had two sisters that were going faithfully, and they both, were telling her, "You need to come, see here. We're going to get rid of all those demons." I think that was the hook. Like, getting rid of the demons, the deliverance work.
So you
That's their
you were
big
the
niche.
problem. Yeah, that you were the problem. Like, the demon was in you. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So I honestly, when I went to church, I wanted to throw myself into this, if I'm completely honest,
Hmm.
because up until that time, I didn't know about anything shady going on in any church. I thought,
Of
church was
course.
great, was going to be good for me, that it was going to bring out the best version of me and all of this stuff. So when
It
I
was
started
also going to
going,
help you through your trauma, as well. I think a lot of
exactly.
people, they go to church because they have trauma, and they go to kind of like understand from, a perspective, um, of what happened with them, on how they can overcome this particular trauma. But, particular churches, I think, only exacerbate or make it worse, far worse, the
Yeah,
the situation.
exactly. Yeah, because more trauma gets compounded, but we're not there yet. So, I basically am trying to say I showed up there totally vulnerable, heart open, ready for like whatever you tell me, I'm going to do it. Like, I believe you. Let's go, because my life is in a shitty place. You look like your life is put together. Like, you know what you're talking about, like, you know what you're doing. So yeah, I was 13 at this point, or 14, 13, going on 14. So we started going faithfully on Fridays and Sundays. Those are the two main hook days. Then from there, we started going almost every day. I would say Mondays, we did the Tuesday chain a couple times, Wednesdays for spiritual life, Thursdays for love life, Fridays for
So you were going
deliverance.
basically 7 days a week.
You
Yes,
just
yes.
described all the days of the week.
Yeah,
Exactly, all the days of the week.
Saturdays for justice, because in the
Sounds about
morning,
right.
right before evangelism, was like a justice service back in
Yeah.
those days.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
it still goes on, I'm sure.
Oh, it's still.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they're open
then
7 days a week.
yeah, and then Sundays. So we were going every day, because if we hadn't shown up after such a traumatic event and in such vulnerability, I don't think we would have thrown ourselves as quickly as we did and as blindly as we
Mhm.
did. But definitely, because we showed up in that like really broken place,
Yeah.
internally, it was really easy to, it didn't take much for me to feel warm, welcomed, and
Mhm.
accepted. I felt like, especially
That's
the
known as
assistant.
love bombing. That's love bombing
Yes,
when it comes to religious
yeah.
organization. That's we're gonna break down on all the, the pathways that church kind of hooks you in. But that's a great example of love bombing, you know.
Yeah, I come to find that out years later that that's actually, a tactic in cults that you do see in cults. But I do want to say that even when I was an assistant, without knowing, like when a new person would come, I was love bombing on people, without knowing. I feel like
Yeah.
there are people that have good intentions. Like I'm sure those assistants had good intentions. They saw a soul that was in
Yeah.
need and they wanted her to feel good and sheltered and really help her, but they
Hmm.
don't realize what they're perpetuating,
Yeah,
they don't know
and those people are indoctrinated, right? So we can't really
exactly.
blame them because they don't know any better.
And
And
I don't.
they, yeah, and then like, if you went and spoke with an assistant in that church, right? Most likely that assistant would be the one who would come in like, "Hey, Steph, it's so great you came back. Hey, you want to talk to
Mhm.
me after church?" Hey, he or she would be the one kind of always, you would always see their face there, and you're kind of like, "Oh, someone really cares, someone actually listens to me, someone is actually here to extend their hand towards me," and kind of like that's how it ropes you into that
Yes.
environment, making you
Right.
not wanting to leave, and then inviting you to more activities, inviting you to more things to do, where your time is just going into like as you come in, especially like on your first like week, first month, it's like, no, you got to come back tomorrow, no, you got to come back, you know
Mhm.
you can't miss any day, you got to do your chain of prayers, you got to do your 7 weeks, because like the more you constantly keep going, it's is a better chance of you being indoctrinated into
Mhm.
that. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I recall, like, maybe probably the first year or close to a year, like maybe the first 9 to 10 months, it wasn't bad. Like we were happy as a family because now there's this social thing that we're doing together. Like looking at it from a psychological standpoint now, you think that, oh, your life is getting better because you're doing all the things that the church is saying for you to do. You're following all the rules, but really there's a lot going on in the background. Like now your family has a common cause. Like me and my mom got closer because we were both going to church to fight for our family, to pray for our family.
Mhm.
Um,
And then what
and
sort of activities were you involved in like during that time? Like what kind of the things you got into the church? Like, can
I
you
mean,
describe
to
them?
be honest, that's why I say that oh, I'm sorry, Anthony, can you mute yourself? I'm hearing myself. I think it's from your mic. Yeah, that's better, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's why the first year I say, or the first close to a year was good because I was not involved in any groups. I was literally just going to the service and my little tushy was leaving. So I didn't have any type of pressure for anything, no pressure to perform or anything like that. I was just a faithful member and I was good at that. So, I think that's why things were good in the beginning. And like I said, me and my mom, we were now camaraderie more, spending more time with each other. I started spending more time like with my aunts and my cousin now, and it became a whole family thing. So life was good in the very beginning, I would say honestly, but only within us that were going to church. People like my brother and my sister, they were not going to the church, and those
They were not
people in the
drinking from the Kool-Aid. They were not
they
drinking
were
from the
not,
Kool-Aid.
and they were adamant that we were in a cult. They were worried about us. And funny enough, I'm speaking about how like, oh, we seemed happy because we were getting close, but we were also getting distant at the same time from other family members and other people that had been a part of our life. So church cut off because of church, like it had us cut off certain people from our lives. And in that sense, it was sad. Like it was laying down the foundation for a distance that I still feel today with some family members. And it's been hard to reconstruct relationships, but it's something that I've been working on and I've been seeing fruits. So it makes me really happy. But
Yeah. Because it's almost like when you come out of that situation, it feels like reaching out to them, it feels like it's not genuine, right? It's not, you're not reaching out to them because you don't feel it almost as is being genuine towards them, because you kind of turn your back on them and completely like
right.
denounce them. It's kind of the same thing I go through with my relatives, right? So My mom and my dad and my brother, I still talk to on and off, but with my cousins, aunts, uncle, some of them I don't even know their names.
Yeah,
Don't know when, their birthdays. They reach out to me. They're like,
that's
and
sad.
we are kind of like complete strangers. So I can relate to that. I don't know if Anthony, you want to
I'm
add to
sorry.
anything?
This is just another classic example of how they start that us versus them mentality, right? Because you're new in the church, you're eager, and they already start sowing those seeds that as you start to get firm in your faith, the devil's going to start coming against you. So when
Yeah.
your family members start warning you, hey, that church is no good for you, you shouldn't go, or you're going too much, or why are you doing this? They're doing due diligence as a family member who is seeing your behavior change,
That's a
right?
great
Seeing you a
point.
lot less, seeing
Hmm.
your vocabulary change, seeing you not participate in family outings anymore. But they train you to see that as a bad thing, like they're an enemy. Oh, the devil's trying to get me to stop going. You see, now I need to double down. And you start cutting off those healthy relationships, right? Those people that actually are looking out for you and saying something.
Yeah.
And that's
Th-
exactly
th-
what
th-
they want. They want those
that's a
people that are
great
vocal to
point.
be villainized so that
Yeah.
they get to be the hero now.
And then leads me to another question to Stephanie. How did you feel when your sister and your brother started saying like you're being part of a cult? How What was your knee jerk reaction to them when you were already drinking from the Kool-Aid of the Universal Church, right? You were already like devout member, you know, already dedicated, and then you heard your brother and your sister be like, Steph, like stop drinking from that Kool-Aid because it's not good for you. What was your kind of your reaction? Did you guys like bicker, or like did you guys actually like fight, or you kind of like, I cannot even be around you anymore?
Absolutely, anger was my knee jerk reaction. I would always get very upset because they're attacking something that is now tied to my whole entire identity and my whole entire life and schedule. And and also I had, because of those changes that I was talking about, like getting closer to my mom, feeling better about myself, I did really feel like this was helping me. So I just felt like they were so ignorant and so dumb, and they weren't that they were demon possessed. I started perpetuating all of those rhetorics as well. And yeah, I would always get very angry. We would bicker. I remember one very strong fight that I had with my brother actually in front of my mother, and he was extra upset because we were participating in the campaign. And
Well,
we were broke. Things were hard for us. I grew up with a family that lived off the government primarily. My mom was on government assistance. I did have my stepdad who would work outside. He would get like paid under the books and things like that. But overall, we were a family that struggled. So any extra cent, any extra dollar should be going to groceries, should be going to necessities, not to the church.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it did cause a lot of strain, and with other cousins as well. Like I had an aunt and her daughter that were also devout members, just like me and my mom. And then she had the same issue with her siblings. Like her siblings would get on them too, especially during campaign time. We were so blind.
Mhm.
Like we in our heads, we were thinking, no, we have to give all of this because God is asking us for this and we want a better life. We
Mhm.
want it in exchange for this blessing. And
Mhm.
it's so crazy how now being on the other side of that, it's so scary. It must have been scary for them to
Yeah.
see such a
And
radical change.
yeah, and are there any like family members of yours that are still in this organization, or no?
Yes, I
There
do.
are.
I do
Okay.
have family members, a couple in there.
Hmm.
Um
And they
and
are like just members, or they're like more into like assistant, or they have climbed kind of the levels of like the hierarchy.
no, I have assistants members, family
Hmm.
members that are there. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
And
so
you,
it's been
Anthony,
hard.
Anthony, do you still have anyone in your family that
No,
still goes?
thankfully, my family got free from that place. They,
Mhm.
and I say that thankfully, not to be like hateful or anything like that, but I
Mhm.
say thankfully because everybody that left, they all left due to situations that they should have never been put in. Like they all
Mhm.
have a very valid reason
For
um,
leaving.
for leaving, and I couldn't blame any of them. Like literally, they were all abused in a different way, or signaled out,
Mm-hmm.
or bullied into
Mm-hmm.
leaving. And
And
it's funny
and
because
did they
the
leave
church has a
after
habit of
you,
that.
or did they leave after you, or did they leave before you guys left?
So they left before me. Before I stopped being a pastor, they were already pretty much gone. But
Mm-hmm.
they would pretend every once in a while they would go, or
Mm-hmm.
they would go on special occasions, primarily to please me, to
Gotcha. Yeah,
to be able to
that
have
was
those
gonna be my
conversations.
question. Yep.
Yeah, because they knew that if they were completely gone and they told me about their problems, that I would just tell them, this because you're not going to church.
Yeah.
They
Mm-hmm.
already
That would
knew
have
that I
been
was going to try to preach to them and convince them and guilt trip them, and they were tired of hearing that, because they had gone through experiences that they felt I wasn't ready to hear about. And they were
gotcha.
right, because I would have just made an excuse for it,
Mm-hmm.
being still
Gotcha.
so indoctrinated.
Yeah. No, no, that's it. Yeah, so yeah, good. I think like those are kind of like the things, like, family members that are still inside, you kind of feel like in between. They try to reach out to you and you really don't know, are they trying to reach out to me because they're trying to really connect with me from a family member perspective, or they're trying to convince me to come back, right?
Hmm.
And kind of like, you've been here before, it's a easy catch, right? Someone that has been there, let me check in on them, because like when I left, people from the church used to reach out to me, but I felt, you know even then, like, it wasn't because they really wanted to know how I was doing. They wanted to see me fail. They really wanted to say like, oh, I'm going through my struggles, I'm going through
Yeah.
hardships. I should have never made the decision I made. They wanted to know where I lived, how I was living, how I was paying my rent, what I was doing for a living. They really wanted to know everything about me. Like, sometimes they even wanted to invite themselves to my house, and I'm like,
They just want to be
whoa,
nosy then. They didn't want to
whoa.
help, they didn't want to be nosy.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, this is where we draw the line. We're not even intimate anymore, or
Yeah.
ever
Wow.
been intimate for me to be inviting you. Like, my house was kind of like my paradise. Like, I wasn't gonna allow any type of energy just to enter it, just because I wanted to
Exactly.
prove to you. It's kind of like going back to what Stephanie said. Like, at that point, I was rediscovering myself and rediscovering my voice, where I learned the power of no, absolutely not, hell no. Like,
No is a
where,
complete sentence.
yeah, so like
Those are
there
one of
was,
my favorite words.
and then I learned different ways of saying no, right? Because you can be like, no,
Yeah.
then I was like, hell no, like, no, I'm not doing this. This is like, no, what you're asking me is preposterous, like, I can't. Um so um so those are kind of the things, right? That people should understand. Like, when you leave your families, if you have family members in there, they may not come with you at all. You may have to, like,
No.
step out by yourself and kind of go through the motions. Then go
Hmm.
ahead, Stephanie. So Steph, you kind of like, you already talking about being like, into different groups,
Members.
like, yeah, members, devout members. Then you climbed a few groups as well, right? You join a few groups in there.
Eventually, I did not join youth group until years later, years after being an assistant, for a variety of reasons why.
Hmm.
But so I guess my course is a little different, because I know
Hmm.
usually, especially as a young person, they'll get thrown into youth group. But I actually started helping in the children's ministry part. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
changed so much. The name has changed so much throughout the years. That
Yeah.
time it was
Sunday
escuelita,
school.
like
Yeah.
little Bible school.
Bible
And
school.
then
We could call it Bible
technically,
school.
legally, we
Yeah.
weren't able to call it Bible school anymore. So it changed to like Kids Zone, I think, and a bunch of other
Kids
stuff. But
zone. Yeah.
okay. For the sake
Yeah.
of this, I'll keep it as Bible school. So I started helping out there, and I actually became in charge of Bible school even before I was an assistant, because the
Wow.
assistant that wasn't yeah, because the assistant that was in charge, I had been helping her for a few months, and she last minute, like, she just didn't want to do it anymore. She quit. And so the pastor's wife, she knew that I had been helping for months and everything. So she vouched for me and told the pastor to put me in charge. So I was in charge of Bible school, and that was a really big responsibility. I remember being in school. I was in high school this time, a freshman. And I remember being in school and like not focusing at all in my class because I'm thinking about all the long list of things I need to do for like an upcoming event that was happening for the kids, or like
Wow.
creating the schedule. I would go to the computer lab at my school to make the schedule for everyone. Like, it was a lot. Looking back, this was definitely a job that like I needed to have been getting paid for. This was a lot of
Yeah.
stress, a lot of
Yeah, because
pressure,
it's
a lot of
almost like
effort.
it's almost like similar to like either a tutor or like an elementary school teacher, like all the materials.
I was like the principal, and on the side I was a teacher too, because I would put myself on the schedule, and I was,
Yeah.
constantly there. And because I was the head of the Bible school, if someone last minute was sick or couldn't cover, I was the main person, that would get sacrificed to work there. And it wasn't all bad. Honestly, like, I love children, so I loved being there, and I would do it with a lot of love, but it was very tiring and it was very hard,
Hmm.
to keep
Especially
up
for a
with that many
freshman, you were like
responsibilities.
what, 14, 15 years old, like yeah,
I was 15 going on 16 around this time. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so fast forward a few months, I become an assistant. And at this time, I was over the moon. I was so excited to be an assistant, to be honest. It had been my dream. My mother had been warning me, funny enough. She's been telling me, don't rush into anything. You shouldn't be an assistant right now. I was 16. So she was like, you shouldn't be an assistant right now. You need to focus on school, focus on yourself. And I'm like, hi, mommy, you don't know anything. Because even though me and my mom started together, I started like getting more involved than her. I started believing even harder than her. I started like having, I guess, like, I don't know, I guess in those terms, back in those days, like, we would say I had more faith than her. So like I would
Hmm.
want to be involved in everything and do everything. So
You
I
were
would
getting
just
more immersed on into it,
more
like you know,
indoctrinated essentially than
yeah,
her.
indoctrinated. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I was the one pushing my mom there, to start doing more things and everything. And similar to Tony, where it's like, okay, the family feels the pressure to perform around me because I was the firm one. I was the strong churchgoer there. So yeah, I should have listened to
You
her.
became the pastor in your own house. You became the
Yes,
auxiliary pastor in your own house.
that was my
Gotcha.
role. Yeah, with my family.
Hmm.
Um, so as an assistant, things at first they were good, but a huge turning point happened, I would say, when like a few months later, pastors changed, they switched, and the one that came is the one that till recently I was still healing so much trauma and abuse that we had
and
suffered under
and
his
and
thumb.
and just so our viewers can kind of understand, right? So in these religious institutions, the pastors do not stay with the congregation for long periods of time. Like Catholic Church, you have the priest that probably saw Stephanie being born, saw Stephanie go through her teenage years, married Stephanie off, maybe the same priest. Of course, there's sometimes they do change it around, but in this institution, I think the pastors can change around like every 6 months, maximum 1 year, or
Mhm.
pushing it here in the United States, maybe 2 years. But
Mhm.
that's like a rare moment
On
in time, right?
average.
On average,
Yeah.
because even if there are within the state, they change churches, they change locations. They might be in the Bronx one time, but then they might be moved to Brooklyn, or they might be moved to another. But even though
Queens.
they're still in the
Mhm.
state of New York, you may lose your pastor if they are not in your branch, right? So just for our viewers to kind of understand. So the reason why the UCKG does that, there is a reason why they do that, is because they don't want the people to form an attachment with that pastor, because if that pastor thinks about leaving, they can lose potentially a congregation, like an entire congregation. So that's why they
Wow.
change the pastors around. It's not like I think the excuse they used it in, for us, was that you can have a spiritual leader. Your leader is God, but you can't follow man, right? So that's what they used to say, like, don't follow man. The pastor is
Mhm.
there to kind of guide you to God, but he's the man of God, but don't follow him. It was all like kind of taking away from you building an attachment to the actual human being.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
the current pastor, he had never the pastor that had raised me to be an assistant and that was there at first, I had no issues with him. He had no issues with me. We weren't like best friends or anything. If I remember correctly, he wasn't really accessible. I didn't speak to him much, but less time with him was less problems. So I was fine. Like the few times we did interact, he treated me with respect. He treated me well. Now that's why it was such a huge like difference when he got transferred to a different state, and the new pastor that came in, he was very, very, very heavily into like the deliverance ministry aspect of the church. So this was his main thing. That would be the point. He would drive home, like try to drive home at every service every day. So I remember at first the way he came about is kind of like that warrior person. So at first I admired him like the first couple weeks there. But then things changed when Tony, because this whole time Tony, for a period, he had been in Texas in his first class. He hadn't been around. And when he came back and this new pastor saw that, I was his love interest and he was my love interest, immediately it's like he took a hatred toward us and he
Romeo
just
and
started
Juliet.
he would come for us for no reason. Like I can honestly say till today, because now I don't give a crap. Like I will say right now, if we had messed around or did stuff like behind the scenes or anything, no, not at all. Me and Tony were actually doing things like to the
We
T. We
should
were
have.
trying our best
We
to,
should have.
honestly. We were like so faithful, so faithful. And
Goody two
I think
shoes.
we
Yeah.
yeah, honestly. And like I think back and I'm like, we should have, messed around more and done all these things that they accused us of doing, because we got shit for it as if we had.
You should
So
have really messed around. Like, you guys want to see me mess around? Let me mess around. Let me show you how Latino mess around.
imagine. But so that's when stuff started going downhill, because we have that going on in the background where like we know deep down the pastor hates us. And then in the foreground, like we're all still getting hit with this idea, like where we got to be paranoid because we can get demon possessed over anything. And if we're not participating in everything that he's saying we need to participate in, and in the way that he's saying we need to participate in, then we are either demon possessed already or in the risk of getting demon possessed. Like he would say a lot, like, be careful, the devil's there watching you. You had to go every Saturday at 10 a.m. to evangelize. If you were not there evangelizing, you were cold in the faith, you were demon possessed. I remember one time he like he put in our heads that like, oh, the demons are there whispering in your ear, don't wake up, no, don't evangelize, don't wake up. So I remember on Saturday mornings when I felt so tired, understandably so, after being burnt out all week long doing all the things that I was doing for the church, on Saturdays when my alarm would ring, I would want to snooze it and just have a day in. And then I'm thinking, no, the demon is right there. He's literally right there whispering in my ear to stay in bed. I need to get up and go to church right now. Like this was the frame of mind all day, every day. It was constantly like, oh, walking on eggshells. I can't do this. Hold on, because I'm opening a door. Every single thing was opening a door.
Yeah.
And
And then just to add to that, right? So for our listeners to understand, is evangelizing, it is one huge form of recruitment for this institution.
yeah,
Like, it's what they rely on. So they need to be all hands on deck Saturday. If you show up to if you show up to any of the services like an hour before, 2 hour before, you need to be pamphleting outside, pushing people through the door, convincing people to come in. So that is like a heavy form of recruitment. And and if you are really like, if you are really committed to the cause, like part of different groups, you are going to be set kind of a goal of how many people you need to bring in, what people to show up. If you are even an assistant, if you're a high ranking assistant and you have brought like bus loads of new people, they're going to be expecting that from you time and time again. And then it's only going to like pack onto it. But continue on, Steph.
Yeah, and talking about that, that also was something that was brought in as well because this pastor was very heavy on how we all as assistants had to bring souls on Sundays, and especially us that he had his extra eye on, like me and Tony, like he really would be watching to see if we were bringing souls. And man, gosh, it was so hard because I'm pouring everything, like in my situation, I'm pouring everything into Bible school. I don't have, like, honestly, the time and the effort that it takes to bring people to the church all the time, every Sunday. Maybe I can bring a friend from high school once in a while or a family member once in a while, but every Sunday it was hard. And, thinking back, it's really selfish and illogical to think that everyone could bring someone on a Sunday because not everyone has that gift or that skill set. It takes a
And
very, like,
you also don't have a circle that deep, right? Because you were
I
like,
don't.
so it doesn't really, so not even that, right? So when you start in the church, right, and you start being committed, you also start getting away from that circle, right? You start giving up, so then people just become strangers. So your circle, kind of your recruitment circle, kind of like diminishes because you're not as often around
Mm-hmm.
them. You're not, doing those. And then now you're kind of having to kind of like convince random people in the streets that you're like whatever it is that you need to bring on a Sunday. It's very stressful on those, because like you can't go to your family members anymore because you basically close the door on them. So
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna be like, why should I help you? Because you haven't spoken to me, you haven't shown up to the cookout, you haven't even called me
Mhm,
or texted me for my birthday.
mhm,
So and so graduated, you said you couldn't make it because you were in church. So it kind of
mhm.
becomes kind of like that circle where where I'm gonna get where I'm gonna get all of this recruitment from my ass, like. And
Mm-hmm.
also like you're
Yeah,
also being you're also not being allowed to be in social settings, right? Like
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
you can't go to parties, you can't go to like your high school. So like the final bell rings and you're out, you can't even socialize with your high school friends. You can't go to like those block parties, was out of the question. Summer camp, let's not even talk about summer camp. As a
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
teenager, you couldn't even go. And all the other things that we would be going up and saying like this is how we socialize with other people. um all of that got taken away from you. So
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
it's funny because they blame you afterwards. They're like, "Why don't you just bring a friend?" I'm like, "Well, I lost all my friends doing what you've told me to
that's
do.
true.
Why
oh,
don't
you're
you
gonna
invite a
say,
family
well, my
member
friend's
over?"
already in church.
Yeah, like
It's
literally, like
true.
I don't. The only family members I talk to are the ones in the church already. So they put you in that situation, and then they get mad at you when your back's against the wall and you have nowhere to draw from anymore.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then like I think like I Steph, were you working at that time? Did you have a job or anything at that time?
Not yet, no, I was just a full-time student.
Yeah.
Um,
So then
and
like your circle of recruitment just got smaller because you could have at least gone to your coworkers and try to invite them from there.
right. I mean, and it's embarrassing to say, but I did become that person that was only reaching out when I wanted to invite them to the church because I needed a number. I needed a soul, And it's like I was just desperate. I would like invite the same uncle every time, the same cousin every time, the same friend every time. And yeah, and so during the time of this pastor's reign in
And you
this
kind of
place,
already knew, like you're probably thinking about it, like you already knew that that uncle and that cousin was gonna say yes, and you're like, yes, I can always count on this one.
exactly, exactly. So for like this, I would reserve certain people for the special events to not burn them out too much. I would invite them every Sunday, but like if it was the oil or like a special event where we really had to bring souls, I'm
Yep.
like, oh please, please, can you come? I had a cousin, or yeah, he's my cousin. He's married to one of my older cousins. That's why, but he is so faithful. I would tell him straight up. I'd be like, listen, I need a number. I need somebody to come for me, please. I need a witness, because they would say like, "Oh, you need to bring your witness to see you get anointed or whatever it was." And I'll just be straight up, and he always pulled through. That's the real one right there.
Yep.
um, but yeah, so during this time, like with this pastor, he even had an assistant that was in charge of making a list and putting down how many people each assistant brought. And then that same Sunday after the service, we would have a meeting. And so we're all petrified, because if you did not bring the amount that you were supposed to bring, if you brought zero, oh, you were in for it. His meetings were long, like 2-3 hours long, and all it was insults and offenses the entire time. I'm not kidding. I never left uplifted from there. Like, the best part would be just, I guess, when we would be what we called seeking the Holy Spirit, because that was my moment where I could like speak with God and let out all of my fears and all of my just everything. But outside of that, every time he preached the word, it was in a very like convictive,
Demeaning.
aggressive way. Yeah, it was always to find fault in you. It was never like, like we had a great day. Thank you guys. Like this was amazing. Like I see you guys
Mhm.
working hard. It was never like that. We were never good enough. We were always garbage. God was always disappointed in us. We always were either demon possessed or about to be demon possessed. We were cold in the faith. Like this was constantly the message we had ingrained in us. So it was really hard to hear that all the time, and already be a person that suffers with like I suffered with a lot of low self-esteem and imposter syndrome and things like that. And looking back, like I'm so sad, because that girl, the young me was doing things really from the bottom of her heart and doing things so faithfully with so much love. And I feel so bad that she got abused and spoken to in such a way. And no one stopped that, everyone got spoken to in that way. It's really sad looking back on. But this was a big turning point for me, because it instilled a lot of fear in me that I didn't have before. Now I was afraid of, I was literally paranoid all the time that I could be demon possessed. I started becoming afraid of even praying on people in the Friday services, because I
Wow.
was thinking, because this pastor, he would put in our heads that, oh, if you're demon possessed and you're praying on people, like you best believe you getting, like you got demons
Read it
in
out.
you.
You're
Yes,
gonna get
yes,
read it
because
out by the demon.
You'd be
I
scared
think
the demons would expose you.
yes. And the thing is, there was nothing for the demon to expose for me, but I would just feel like he'll find something, he'll do something, like, it was so crazy to live in that fear
It's that
for
reverse
day in,
psychology
day out.
because most likely he was the one doing all of the
I'm
things
so glad
wrong.
you mentioned that, because that's where I was getting at. I recently had this, I do somatic therapy nowadays. It helps me stay connected and in a good place spiritually. And I recently, in one of my sessions, I had such a big release, finally, of that's the trauma I still had towards him, because I was realizing that people only project what they have. So if he was so like, always trying to pound in us that we must be demon possessed,
You
always trying to
over
get people
fixated on that.
he very over fixated on that, and always trying to, I think he would do this to get people to confess stuff, because it's like he couldn't believe
Mhm.
that there really was people with no sins on the side, like living a double life in a way. So it's like he's always trying to use that fear to make people fess up to something. And it's like
Mhm.
people can only project what they have. There must have been something killing him inside, some guilt, something he had been
Yep.
doing or did. And maybe he's the one that was so scared all the time of being demon possessed. So he's trying to put that fear on all of us.
The
So that
projection,
was a
yeah.
beautiful experience. And I just wanted to say that for anyone else who may be struggling about that, like, who you are, and anyone that try to make you feel like you were some evil, demonic, like, you know, person that was so far from God, your relationship with God, how you were doing things. Like, don't let anyone tell you it's probably them, that's doing all of that. And that's why it's in their heads. That's why they're overly fixated on it. So, needless to say, while he was there, I had like a bunch of issues like that. I even had a friend that had a whole entire mental breakdown, because that's how much he was ingraining in us that we could be demon possessed. And after during that time, eventually he got transferred away. Someone else came. Thankfully, this person was much nicer to me. He actually liked me a lot and treated me very well. And I needed that. I needed a break. But during this time, I started working for the church. And this is when my eyes really started to open, because already
Mhm.
working for the church and being more involved in the internal things, you start to
And you were
see.
working for their what corporate office or something like where you were working in a what was your position within the church, like working where?
Technically, my position was HR, and I had no schooling or experience in HR at all whatsoever.
So you were
So
working more in their corporate office, so to
yes,
speak.
I was working in the headquarters church. So I didn't work in their main office is in New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
but I was working in the headquarter church. So we had a secretary there, and in the same office I had my desk. So I was HR, and that's when I started seeing the lies that we have to say, you know, how we get, the pastors here, the whole like visa situation, the forms, I'm around pastors more, so I'm hearing conversations that I would never be around before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yeah,
just
because they
starting
tend
now.
to brag a lot. They tend to brag a lot, and then they say things that they shouldn't be saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And I start to really understand the politics at this time, the competitiveness, the even like among the wives as well, the just kind of like the jabs that one would throw to
Oh yeah.
another,
Oh
the
yeah. It's
rumors, the
like
gossiping, very catty. Yeah, yeah. And so
extremely.
think of it like this, like I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal at all, but I was very innocent minded, like very, very ignorant, and just
I don't
yeah,
think I
just
wouldn't say
innocent.
that was you were not ignorant. You just you had painted this picture in your head of perfection that it started to like chip, like the glass started to chip and you started to see the cracks, right? It's not
Yes.
even a ignorance part, because ignorance would mean that you are ignoring, you're seeing all the red flags and you're ignoring them. You didn't, you kind of create a mirage for yourself of what this institution was to you, and then when you were working in the backstage, you realize it's a shit show.
Mhm. Mhm, absolutely. And I mean, up until this point, I had been exposed to red flags and seen red flags, but like definitely this was more like stuff that I just felt was really wrong. It wasn't like before as an assistant, the things you see as an assistant, not to say that there aren't assistants that see things, because I'm sure that there are, but it's kind of easier to kind of just chalk it up away like, oh, the ministry is run by man, but it's God who's in control. We just got to keep our eyes on God. But when you're like day in and day out working in an office and you're constantly like seeing how things are being run, it's
Mhm.
very I started changing too. I started becoming more of I started to like kind of getting more mechanical with the things of the church because I was working for the office, and that's how everyone around me was
And,
treating the work.
and it's a good thing that you pointed out, right? Because that in psychology is known as rationalization, right? You rationalize, with your mind is telling you like this is wrong, and then you're rationalizing with it, but it may be wrong, but I'm doing this for God, right? So that's the excuse, like I'm doing this for God. But then, because like you said, like I changed, I became more robotic. It was basically your brain is like telling you, you know what, Stephanie, since you want to continue on this path, I'm gonna rid you of conscious.
Disassociate.
No, yeah, you're gonna disassociate, and I'm gonna rid yourself from conscious. Because if you
Yeah.
think about it, like even us as children, right? When we do something wrong and we know that it's wrong, there's like kind of like an alert that goes off in our head, right? We
Mhm.
made a mistake. It is wrong. We're gonna get in trouble for it, right? So if you continuously continue to do that, then your brain starts telling you like, I've already told you that this is wrong, but if you want to keep at it, I'm gonna completely, I'm not gonna warn you anymore. Like you deal
Right.
with the consequences. So basically, your brain is like you becoming another person. Is you went into that rationalization that your brain is like, it's still wrong, Steph. But let me tell you something. If you want to continue onto this path and you're going to continue to do this, do you, and then you became
Yeah.
like you just went through the motions because you kind of like, it's almost like, I hate going back to kind of your example of your, you know of your abuse, is like it happened the first time, you kind of didn't know what really was going on, and then the second time
Yeah.
you were feeling uncomfortable, and you like, you knew like, and then you came to the point where like this is wrong, like I don't feel
Mhm.
good doing this, right? But you're putting into that situation that you kind of disassociate from it, and you just, okay, forget about it. Let me get rid of this pain. Like as soon as I give into this, it's gonna happen. It's gonna be over soon, right? It's like
Yeah.
you're doing it to survive. It's like when you go into survival mode, you do whatever it takes to stay breathing, to continue on breathing, because you want to make it to the other day.
It's like a coping mechanism.
Coping mechanism, all of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so, I would see the mistreatment of pastors. Like, I would see how the bishops would treat the pastors and how the pastors would treat other pastors and vice versa. It
The
was
hierarchy.
it was disgusting. Yeah, I got to see the hierarchy, the politics behind everything. And to survive, you just kind of have to play by the rules.
Put your
That's
head down and like act like he's not with you, or like sometimes you may even be, I'm not sure if you ever were, but I've been in rooms where like, a bishop is going like calling all types of names, another pastor that's probably not doing as good, and you are in that room and you kind of like you just go into a little corner, like I hope he
hmm
doesn't see me, because I'm gonna hear the backlash
Oh
too. I'm gonna
yeah,
get the backlash, right? And God forbid
absolutely.
you breathe too loud, because then it's like, oh, you in here, like you're gonna get some of this too, and you will like, I come in peace.
Exactly. No, yeah. It was easy to get roped into stuff in there. Like even if you had nothing to do with anything, you will get in trouble and you cannot speak up for yourself. You are not allowed to say, "Oh, wait, but that was a misunderstanding. That's not what happened." Or nope, you just had to take it as a good servant would and just, do better.
Yeah.
It was really fucked up.
Well.
But so, now we're at a point where me and Tony start dating eventually. After I'm skipping a lot of the relationship stuff because I
Yep.
feel like we've spoken about it before.
hmm
Um, but so now we're dating, and so now I'm like a candidate for a pastor to be a pastor's wife because I'm dating a pastor. So the pressure on me is even more. The pressure to perform. I have more tasks, more obligations. I'm working for the church, and to my dismay, that pastor that I had spoken about that like caused so much trauma, he had left, and a good one had come. Well, when that guy left, the other one came back. So he came back into my life a second time, and he came back right when I'm like dating Tony. So, oh my God. There was so much stress.
And in between these two times, like the first time he got sent over there, I was in Texas training, right? Then he leaves. Well, when he leaves, I'm in San Antonio. He arrives there. One day I'm in the middle of doing a service. He gets stationed in the same branch that I was in, but I was in the English
Wow.
side, and he got sent to help out in the Spanish because he got
hmm
sent demoted. He got burned.
Oof,
So he went to go help
good.
somebody. Yeah, he needed a humility check.
He did.
Um, and so you got relief from him, and I started dealing with him. And I hadn't dealt with him in a few years at this point. And he's meanwhile taking kind of jabs at you and trying to convince me to forget us.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we never
Yeah.
caught a break.
Yeah, exactly. And so now being a candidate to be a pastor's wife is like the church owns you. Okay. You don't have your own
It's not
schedule.
like they own you. They own you. It's not like, or any if but so maybe they are you're stepping into being owned from the time you wake up to the time you sleep, what you do, where you go, like even where you go, like if
Yeah.
depending on if you have to report to another wife and you leave, god forbid you leave to go and do some shopping, and you do not let her know.
Right. Every move you make, my social media, like the pastor's wife that was my big sister in Godlywood, that's a whole other factor that I didn't mention. So there's a sorority that the church has. And during this time, this was when it was forming. And in the sorority, we have like a lot of tasks. We have a huge no list. So more guidelines of like what not to wear, what not to do. Uh, It to a point, it was so silly because every
The
year
way
they
you
kept on.
dress, like you have to talk about like the way you dress, what the color you paint your nails,
Yes,
your
green, for example, was
hairstyle,
unacceptable.
even your hairstyle is also
Your
another
hair
thing.
color,
Your
you
hair color,
couldn't
how much
shine
makeup.
too much. Right,
Yeah.
you couldn't stand out too much. If you stood out too much, you had to be discreet. And, no, certain colors were just on the no-no list. And every year the no-no list kept getting larger and larger, and the items were
Mhm.
getting like funnier and funnier. I remember one year, like it said, no, being sick all the time. What? How do you control that? Like it literally said no being sick all the time.
And mind you, this is a church, so sickly people come all the time. Like, are they just not
That's
welcome in
true.
this sorority because it's not a good look, or like, what is going on?
Pretty much free
Guys,
labor.
yeah, yeah. And so, they had an issue with my Instagram handle, so I had to change my Instagram handle. It wasn't even anything bad. I couldn't post just anything. Like literally, it's like what you said, Sarah. They own you. So yeah, you basically have to make yourself small and fit in like this small little box to and you still someone will still find issue with you because in there, like that's just how it is. But that's the best way to survive, just to make yourself small and hope and pray that no one notices you, you know?
Exactly. And
Um,
it's good that you brought that up because I still have a problem with that today where I cannot accept compliments. Cannot accept recognition. I try
oh,
my best to kind of stay in the background and like people not to know my name. When people come back like, oh, Sarah is like she can solve your problem. Even at work, like today at work, I was handling something and then someone wrote to me like, thank you so much for what you do. My response was like, that's my job. Like you're not, I have a real tough time taking in compliment, even like,
accepting.
and I mean we can discuss this on another time, so I don't want to make it too lengthy, but even my appearance, I still cannot accept the fact that, I do know I am pretty, but I do not tell myself that. Like I have a problem telling myself that, and like,
Right.
building that confidence. Like I put on like every single morning, it's like have to go through the mantra, but it's still is a tough time accepting when someone comes and tells me like, oh, Sarah, you're very pretty, or I like your hair, or think that my thing is I look down and I just say like, okay, thank you. I
Thank
really
you.
don't know how to like, take that in or soak it up. Even when my husband, when we started dating, when he used to tell me like, you're so beautiful, you like affirming, things that I should have known, like things that I like, most of these things that you kind of build that confidence. For me, was like almost like, please don't keep telling me that. Like I can't hear it, because it was like, if I didn't, because in the church was like told that if you're told that you're beautiful, if you're told you this, then it's going to build your ego, and that's going to send you to
Exactly.
hell,
Mhm.
right? Build your
It's
ego, and
like
then you.
you think like it's a sense of humility to like
Mhm.
deflect the compliments, right? But I actually heard something really good about that, about false humility. So it's almost a pride thing. It's like I know better than everybody else and what they're telling me. Like, no, don't do that. You're gonna make me, feel a certain type of way.
Mhm.
That defense mechanism is actually not even humility. You're actually being more adamant about, you know your
Yep.
position
Mhm.
than allowing them the words to sink in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and,
Wow.
and kind of accepting that you are like, God
Yeah,
made you this way, or accepting you, because like I know that I had moments where I didn't accept my body, I didn't accept my hair texture. Because all of that was like stripped away from me. It was either coming in jab of a joke, or in a way of making it me sexualized as well. Like it's another topic that of conversation that we can have as well. But I don't want to lengthen too much, and I don't want to take away from Steph. You're telling your story today. But yeah.
Um, so, it's a rough time to be a candidate as a candidate for a pastor's wife. And I know that there are other people that probably have even worse stories because there are some that actually had to live with a bishop and wife. That was not my experience. Thank God was not. I'm sorry, Sarah.
I did. But I think that cemented for me to absolutely say this is not for me. Like remember I told you like I learned the no. Like I just said this is not for me, and then I went to proceeded to like hell no, you know. So those are kind of the things in there. So so yeah.
So and if I can just say one experience in particular, while I'm, dating Tony, my cousin, who I'm so close to, and she's an assistant in the church at this time, she was getting married on a Saturday. So that Friday night, instead of going to church after work in the headquarters, I went to her house because I wanted to help, pamper her. It's the night before her wedding. We were gonna get like everything ready. We were gonna like do her nails, like girly stuff. And I got a phone call from the pastor's wife. She screamed at me. She said, "You cannot just not come on a Friday night service. You need to ask for permission for that." And the thing is, this was one thing I did that maybe it was rebellious or not. I don't care. I'm so glad I did it. I purposely did not tell them of my plan that I could not make it because I knew that they were going to tell me, "Nope, you have to come." So instead, I just did it. I just went to my cousin because this is a once in a lifetime thing. Like my cousin's only going to
Mm-hmm.
get married once. That's what we thought anyway at that time. Like hopefully, so this is my only chance to have like this special moment together with her. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to risk like someone taking that away from me. So I'm really glad that I did that. But that's how controlling they are. Like you
Yeah.
literally could not
And
do
then the other thing that could
anything.
happen was they would, as soon as you said that, they would say, "Okay, yeah, fine, you are authorized to go," and then at the last minute they would create something that you be like have to cancel your entire plan, right? Because that
Yeah,
was another thing that they used to do a
very
lot with me,
manipulative.
like where they're
Really.
like, "No, no, Sarah, you like, yeah, you don't need to come this Saturday," and then all of a sudden on like Friday, like 11 p.m., I used to get a phone call saying, "Hey, we're going to do a recording. I need you here, blah, blah, blah." And then, like, I have to
Ah,
cancel all my plans and then, head out.
that sucks. And in Gollywood, we're hearing things like you need to have a life of balance. They're saying like all the right things sometimes. Like they're saying, oh, you need to have a life of balance, you need to make me time, you need a self-care, certain things like that. But down to the nitty-gritty of it, we weren't allowed to do that. Like at the end of the day, if we were assistants and involved in other groups, the pastor wanted us involved in other things and doing other things. There was no family time. On a regular Friday, I would be out of my house at 7 a.m. to get to work, right? That was in the headquarters. And then after that, go to my church. And then after that, there'll probably be a vigil and I'll be home around midnight. So my Fridays were like literally from 7 a.m. to midnight. I wasn't home. I wasn't with my parents. I wasn't with my dog. Like we had a dog and we had just gotten a dog at that time. And I couldn't even be around our new pet or anything. Like it was church, church, and work for the church all the time. Um, Time passes and we eventually get
Let's
approved to
say,
get married.
so hold on. We're going to talk about that. We already had 1 hour and 34 minutes. I think this is going to need a second part two, right? So let's just stay tuned, guys. We're going to, like, Stephanie's going to get into her second part of her story on next week regarding when her and Tony gets married, because I think it goes through like different stages of the church.
Yes.
But yeah, so that is like, yeah, so hold on to that, Steph. You're gonna come back. Is there
Right.
anything, Anthony, you'd like to add, you know overall?
I mean, I think it's important to talk about these experiences. I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I never gave any of the things I went through in that place a second thought after it happened. Like I was just worried about keeping it going and the next thing, right? There's always something else happening, right? They keep you
Survive.
so busy that you never really have time to sit down and process everything that just happened. But like I think it's important to break down, since this is a global organization, like
Yeah.
the beginnings of it, like how it is when you first start going in, when you first start having that inside look, that first doubt, when you first start
Process it.
getting separated from your family and separated from your friends, and just like really, really like looking at yourself. And maybe you're still in the institution, and that's perfectly fine, right? But just, there's so many people with depression in there that don't admit it, because like the institution, it strips you of the essence of what makes you you, right? A lot of that individuality, like they try to strip it from you. So you can even pick up all these like habits and like doctrine and all that good stuff, but there's so many people that are unhappy because they're being suppressed. Like low key, they want to change how they look. They want to change something so simple like their hair, right? That they can't
Mhm.
wear the way that they would like to
Or
because
they
they know
want to
somebody
express
else is going to
themselves.
say something about it. Yeah, they want to say, no, I didn't do that, but the pastor is already looking at them as the rebellious one, so they have to just eat, all the blame. It shouldn't be like
Mhm.
that. Like this is a church. We go there for help. We're volunteers for the
And we
most
go there for
part. Like,
acceptance too, right? So we also go to
yeah.
churches for
And doesn't
acceptance.
God accept everybody? So why are these men like speaking for God where clearly he already spoke for himself? Like why are we trying to overachieve to the point that even meeting biblical standards isn't enough? We need to please also every human being that crosses our path.
Yep.
Every pastor and bishop's like little whims, like we got to
Whims.
meet all those too. No,
Exactly.
get out of here, man. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. I think today's discussion was amazing. I think we kind of like, hit some really major points in like, our spiritual where we are in our spirituality, how, we are kind of progressed from there. I think Steph, your story like speaks volume as to why would someone actually be, you know, sucked into it. Like you were looking for a place to kind of
A
give
safe
you kind of
haven.
a safe haven, and you kind of
Mhm.
found it there for a little bit, right? You kind of like
Mhm.
thought that you found it, but that safe haven started like, being ominous to like continuously sucking
Right.
you like a black hole. It's almost like a black hole where you kind of being sucked in further and further, and you kind of forget your life before it, because it's like what was your life like before the church, and then you're kind of like you're like in this kind of twilight zone, like
Yeah.
almost like kind of like
Like a void.
a void, and you kind of like don't know, like you kind of lose all your sense of an identity, right? And
Yeah.
that's where like we it's something that we are continues going to talk about. It's like your identities is everything for you, like what makes you you, and you kind of like having to strip versions of it and recreate someone that you're not, that sometimes even you yourself is like, but I wasn't like this, I never liked
Yep.
this.
You water yourself down to the
Yeah.
extreme, basically,
But
right? And to a point that you're not even happy with yourself.
yeah. Yeah.
And if I can just say, it's like I always want to be honest when I say my story, and I don't want to hide that there were good parts and there were good moments, which is why like I said, like, in the beginning things were really great, because I feel like
Hmm.
people watching right now, especially if you are still going, maybe you feel like no, but like, this can't be true because, or rather like you feel a certain loyalty to a place because there were good moments, and that's what makes this situation very nuanced, because it's like, how can you kind of come to terms with the fact that you're in a place that might be harming you and be toxic for you, but at the same time it gave you good memories, it gave you good experience, it gave you good people, because the people that go there, like a lot of the people are genuinely good people. Like, I'm not by any means shit talking the people that go there, the
No.
assistants or anything like that, or even all the pastors. It's like that's what makes this like such a sticky situation. And so I want people to know, like, people that are listening, this is a safe place. I want you to be able to feel the way that you feel, explore your feelings about this. Like, don't, I think what I used to do a lot is, even when I felt like something was wrong, I wouldn't sit with it. I wouldn't allow myself to sit with anything that could dirty my eyes against the church, like instant refusal. And every time that you do that, you're denying yourself more and more and more. You're becoming less and
A
less of yourself.
rationalization, like you're denying
Yes,
yourself a moment to actually think about and digest what you just saw, and kind of
exactly.
ask yourself like, did do I accept this? Because like you're already saying like, no, it I gotta have like good eyes. I have to see everything from
Redirect.
a redirect.
I
Yeah.
was always redirecting myself, never really allowing myself to sit with my thoughts and my feelings about something, because, oh no, that's the devil. Like, be careful. And it's like, guys, honestly, you are smart. Listen to yourself. And that your end result is not going to be like our end result. Everyone's path is going to look different. Like there's some people that might be like looking at me and thinking, oh no, but I always want to remain like a faithful Christian. I never want to stop being a Christian. Then go ahead and be a Christian like forever. That's fine. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying
Yep.
do religion smart, you know, like open your eyes, don't allow yourself to get abused. And there are a lot of beautiful things that can come with religion, like community and a social like unity and a cause where you feel, you know, united with the same people, like you're doing good, and that's great. But do it
Mhm.
responsibly, you know, watch out for yourself. No one else is going to watch out for you better than yourself, so like listen to
Right.
yourself. That's
Absolutely.
all.
Yeah. And guys, if you made it to this far, thank you so much for watching. We will be back with another episode, and we're going to continue with Stephanie's story. Again, if you like this channel, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe if you want to continue getting notifications regarding the topics that we are talking about here. And then, Steph, can you help me? What is our Instagram and TikTok? How did they find
Of
us on social media?
Of course. So, you guys, if you feel so inclined, please follow us on our Instagram and TikTok. The handle is the same for both, which is The Dark Side of Devotion. Our name is the same across all platforms. So, that's easier for you to follow us, comment, and you know, we'd really appreciate it if you shared because, you know, in these recent months, we have met so many people specifically because people have been sharing with other people this content. And there's not enough people in this type of space talking about this. And there's so many of y'all that need healing, that need to heal this, hear this, that need to feel like someone else understands. So please
Mhm.
share. And yeah, follow us. And until the next episode.
Yeah. And then, Anthony, if someone has kind of, if they want to ask questions, if they want to send their story or even get advice from us, how would they do that?
They can reach us by email, the dark side of devotion at gmail.com. If you have questions, doubts, concerns, or you want to share your story and kind of let us know, you know, what you've been through, something that stood out to you, we're open to hearing. We are building a community at the end of the day. And the good thing about this community is that we do accept each other as we are. So we don't need to agree on everything 100% or even 1%, but we are open to hearing and understanding a different perspective, which is, I think, one of the most important lessons a person can pick
Mhm.
up is to be open,
Yep.
because just being open doesn't mean you accept everything, but you are open.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.
Bye.